Hello everybody, it's me again. I'm coming to you again from Russia to answer a question that I've been wanting to answer for a long time, but someone just asked it again and I figured why not make this video. How long does it take to learn a language? But I'm going to talk more about how long does it take to become a polyglot, because I think that's a more interesting question. So how long does it take to learn a language? In my experience, have found that the FSI numbers for learning languages, you can Google that if you don't know what that is, FSI Language Difficulty Scale or something like that, are pretty accurate for learning your first language, the first time you embark to learn a language, which is about 2,000 hours for a difficult language, meaning a language far removed from your own. So for an English speaker, that would be something like Chinese, Japanese, or Korean. And about 1,000 hours, maybe somewhere between 1,000 and 1,500 hours for a middle difficulty language, something like a far removed Indo-European language like Russian, or an unrelated language like Turkish or Hungarian. About 1,000 hours. And for a very easy language like German, French, or Italian, you're looking at somewhere closer to 500 hours. I found that to be about right for getting to like a basic level of fluency where you can chat about most things, understand the stuff for the most part, read things without too much difficulty, basic level. And I found that to be the case. So in this video, I'm going to talk a little bit about how long does it take to become polyglot, and I'm going to share with you how much time I've spent learning my languages. I should first say that now I keep track of all of my language learning activities in this book. I keep track of it in everything I do in every language that I study in 15-minute increments. And I started doing this, let me see, I don't know, about a year ago, just because I want to know exactly how long I've spent learning all my languages. So the numbers that I have are not very accurate for the 5 or 6 languages that I started studying before I started keeping track of this, before I started keeping this notebook. But I have a pretty good estimate, a pretty good idea of how long I've spent in each language, and I'll share that with you now. For my 3 best languages, which are Ancient Greek, Latin, and Russian, I have spent, I estimate, somewhere around the 2,000 hour mark. Definitely around the 2,000 hour mark for Greek and Latin, and maybe a little less for Russian. Maybe Russian's closer to 1,500, but I don't know. It could be close to 2,000. I don't know. For Italian, I think I've spent about 500 hours in Italian. For German, I think it's been about 300 to 400 hours. And then for Modern Greek and French, about 100 hours each. For Sanskrit and Japanese, about 50 hours each. And then Chinese, Mandarin Chinese, Spanish, Old English, Old Norse, and I guess that's about it. And maybe a few other little languages here and there. All those are much, much less, between the 1 and 20 hour mark. So you can see I've spent, if you add those up, somewhere between 7,000 and 8,000 hours probably learning languages in the past 5 years. And you can figure out how many hours that equates to every day if you want. So I should also just tell you a bit before I continue about my notebook here. I like to make it very hard for me to accumulate time studying language, because it's like a game that I play with myself. So for example, although those are the numbers that I think I've spent in all of the languages, the numbers that I have in my book are much lower, because the lower the numbers are, the more I want to increase them, right? And also, maybe the time I spent studying when I was first learning languages wasn't as efficient as I am now, and, I also don't really count conversations or immersion in my language numbers. I only count dedicated studying hours, like hours I spent actually reading or listening or studying the grammar or writing, something like that. I don't keep track of just immersion hours or conversation hours, speaking hours, just studying hours. So all the numbers I have in my book are much lower than that, and I sort of enjoy that. And another way I make it hard I'll give you some examples of the way I make it hard for myself is, for example, let's say I told you I keep track of everything in 15-minute increments. So if I studied 13 minutes and then I get a phone call, and I didn't get to finish my 15 minutes, and then I sit back down to study, I won't just study for 2 more minutes, I'll study for 10 more minutes. I'll say, okay, to give myself credit for 15 minutes for studying, I need to study for 10 more minutes. So that's one example. Or let's say I'm reading a novel in German, and I know that I can read about 20 pages every half hour in this novel. when I'm at my best. Like when I first wake up in the morning, if I start reading, I can read 20 pages in a half hour, and that's like that's my height. But then let's say I pick up that book and I'm reading it at night when I'm tired, or I'm busy or stressed or whatever, and I'm not reading at my best. I'm not reading at the best. I won't give myself credit for a half hour of reading until I reach the 20-page limit, even if it takes me an hour, given my tired state, to reach those 20 minutes, because I know at my peak, the amount of studying I can do in a half hour is 20 pages. I'll only give myself credit for a half hour. So I like to make it hard for myself, and it's sort of like a game I play. Maybe that would be helpful for you, maybe not. Maybe it's very masochistic. Maybe you shouldn't take my advice. So that's how I arrive at my numbers that I keep track in my book. But for the numbers that I think I've actually spent, those are the ones I've just given you. Right. So how long does it actually take to become a polyglot? If you look at me, in Latin, ancient Greek, Russian, Italian, German, modern Greek, and French, that's 7 languages. I've reached a level in all of those languages where I can read most things, at least in the lower language. My ability level in all those languages is very vast. From high to almost very low. But in all those languages, I can read most things. I can chat a bit, at the very least, and understand what people say to me, which is more important than actually being able to produce it, and enjoy the languages to some extent. And then the other languages like Sanskrit, Japanese, Chinese, Spanish, all those are other languages that I don't have any real level in, but I'm still studying. I'm still trying to get to a decent level in them. So to get to that level in those 7 languages, plus all of the other little language stuff that I've done, I've spent about 7,000 or 8,000 hours, right? So I think that's a pretty good number to play with. And I'm going to play with it a little bit more. But let's say you're a polyglot, or you're not a polyglot yet. You want to be a polyglot. You want to learn 3 languages. I think a polyglot is someone who speaks 3 languages besides their native languages. And you want to learn 1 hard language, 1 one language of moderate difficulty, and 1 easy language. And you're looking at 2,000, 1,500 hours, so 3,500 hours to reach an intermediate level, or probably not even an intermediate, but basic fluency, like being able to understand, 90%, being able to chat, being able to say what you want, being able to read a bit. It's going to take you about 3,500 hours to get there, right, depending on the difficulty of the languages and your efficiency in studying. So what does that mean? If you can dedicate 1 hour a day to learning a language, it's going to take you 9.5 years, 9.5 years to get to that level. If you can dedicate 2 hours every day, and I mean every single day, to it, it'll take half that, 4.7, right? It's 4.7 years. 3 hours a day, 3.1 years. 4 hours a day, 2.3 years. So that would just be to get to a basic level in 3 languages of various difficulties. 3,500 hours. I think that's a fine number. Now let's say you want to take those languages a little bit more advanced and add about 3 to 4 more languages. So you're looking at 6 to 7 to 8, maybe even 8 languages, depending on the difficulty of the languages and whether or not they're related to languages that you have already studied. So you're looking between 6 to 8 languages at an intermediate level. I think you're looking at about another 3,500 hours, so 7,000 hours to get to this point, right? And so if you're working an hour every day, it'll take you 19.2 years to reach that goal of 7,000 hours of basic moderate competency in 6 to 8 languages. So that would be 20 years, let's say, for 1 hour a day, for 2 hours a day, 9.5 years, for 3 hours a day, 6.3 years, for 4 hours a day, 4.7 years, for 5 hours a day, 3.6 years, for 6 hours a day, 3.2 years, and for 7 hours a day, 2.7 years. So conceivably, if you have a lot of time on your hands, you could reach a very high level, or a very decent level, a respectable level in 7 languages in under 3 years. If you're a full-time student and you can find that amount of time, or if you have incredible time management skills like the professor here on YouTube, if you watch his video, and you can fit in 7 hours of studying time a day, you can achieve a lot in a few years. If you only have an hour a day, you're looking more like 20 years. If you skip a few days every once in a while, you're looking at over 20 years. If you can only manage a half hour, you're looking at 40 years. And this is not taking into account, of course, keeping languages fresh in your mind, and also not taking into account the fact that it seems to be that more intensive study is better. So, like, for example, studying an hour a day every day for a year and getting 365 levels is not as effective as studying, I don't know, about 10 hours a day every day for a month, or 5 hours a day every day for 2 months. That, even though you're looking at about the same amount of hours, ultimately, it's more effective when they're condensed more. But I don't know. Let's just say that it's okay. So to become a polyglot, 6 to 8 languages, decent level, you can chat, you can travel, you can read a bit. You're looking at somewhere between 3 and 20 years, depending on how many hours you can put in each day. All right, so I guess that's the answer to the question. 3 to 20 years to become a polyglot, depending on what you can do, right? So, but the real message here is keep track of what you're doing. Keep track of how many hours you're spending. So if you don't know how many hours you're spending, you're just kidding yourself, right? You need to have numbers. You need to have data to look at, to see how you can improve, to how you can, how much time you're actually spending. Study with a stopwatch. I like to study with a stopwatch. It keeps me motivated. It keeps me on task. When the time's ticking down, I realize that I'm getting closer and closer to death, and that I need to accomplish as much as possible in this life. No, I'm sorry. That's a little grim. But seriously, our lives are flowing away before our eyes, right? Wasting away. And we need to accomplish more. Too many people just let their lives, fly by without actually doing anything. The time is just, they don't account for their time. I believe in accounting for their time, for holding yourself accountable for your time. And also, in addition to this, in addition to keeping track of how much time you're spending so you have good data, I also recommend thinking about your goals and then figuring out how long it's going to take you to achieve those goals. So you actually know. When you don't know how long it's going to take you to do something, it's sort of, I don't know, I find it harder to keep on track. If I know it's going to take me a certain number of hours and a certain number of years to finish something, it's much more tangible. I can check it off an hour every day until I reach that goal. So I'll give you an example. So I'm going to tell you a little bit more about my goals in language learning right now. And so for the next, I don't know, no, it doesn't matter how much long. So I'm going to tell you, for ancient Greek and Latin, I want to spend another 500 hours in each of those languages. And I think another 500 hours in each of those languages is, will give me, I don't know, it'll improve those languages. I just want to continue reading. So I have this goal, that my goal in those 2 languages is to spend another 500 hours in each of them. In Russian, I have the goal of spending another 1,000 hours in Russian. I want to spend another 1,000 hours working on Russian. For German, I want to spend another 800 hours. For Italian, I want to spend another 600 hours. For modern Greek, I want to spend another 700 hours. For Spanish, I want to spend 100 more hours. For French, I want to spend 300 more hours. For Japanese, I want to spend 1,000 more hours. And for, I want to start Polish soon, I want to spend 300 hours on Polish. Those are my immediate language goals, right? That's 6,400, oh wait, and Sanskrit. I want to spend 500 hours on Sanskrit. So that's about 6,400 hours of language learning that I want to accomplish sometime soon, right? I mean, not soon, but whatever. So I know that that's my goal, and I keep track of everything in my notebook, so I know how much time I'm spending. And once I hit one of those goals, I'll probably let that language sit on the back burner while I work on my other goals. And then once I finish all of meet all of these goals, then I'll think about redefining my goals, saying like, okay, I did those 500 hours in ancient Greek, I did these 1,000 hours in Russian, how many more hours now do I want to do in these languages once I can keep track, sorry, there's a fly flying around, once I look at my level after having done another 1,000 hours in Russian or another 500 hours in ancient Greek, I can then say, how many more hours do I want to put in? Or I can say, oh, what new languages do I want to add now? I'm not going to add in new languages until I meet these goals, right? And to meet that goal of 6,400 hours and all of those languages, I figured out how many hours a day I need to work to meet that goal, right? So if I only work 1 hour a day at this, it's going to take me 17 more years to meet that goal. Which I don't know. It's not bad. I already have a foundation in a lot of languages, and I'm not in a rush. I enjoy learning languages, so 17 years. I mean, whatever, you know. But if I can up that to 2 hours, of course, I cut it in half, at 8 years. And that's already looking a lot better, 8 to 9 years to meet that goal. If I can up that up to 3 hours a day, it's only about 6 years, a little under 6 years I could finish that goal in. If I up it to 4 hours a day, I'm looking at somewhere about 4.5 years. 5 hours a day, 3.5 years. So, that's what that's it. If I tend to study my languages between 3 to 6 hours a day. So I'm looking at meeting this goal somewhere between, I don't know, 3 to 6 years. In 3 to 6 years from this day, I will have met, if I continue as I plan to do my goals, I will have met this set of goals, which means I think I'll have a decent level, I'll have a better level in all the languages that I know now, like ancient Greek, Latin, Russian, German, Italian, and modern Greek, and I will have really advanced my level in Spanish, French, Japanese, Polish, and Sanskrit. And at that time, in about 3 to 6 years, whenever, depending on how much energy I have and how much time I can devote to this, I will then think about where I want to allocate my time. Maybe I want to learn another language. There's a lot of other languages I want to attack. I want to learn Turkish. I want to learn Arabic. I want to learn Mandarin Chinese again. I want to learn Portuguese. There's a lot of languages. I could maybe add another language, or maybe I want to say, okay, no, enough languages for now. I want to really work on reading, my Japanese, or I really want to, become more acquainted with, German literature at this point. So that's that's the number one piece of advice in this video. It takes a long time to become a polyglot, so what you should do to make the process easier is keep track of how many hours you spend learning and calculate how many hours it's going to take you or estimate how many hours it's going to take you to reach your goals. And like I said, I think the FSI numbers are okay for that. Oh yeah, sorry, this video is becoming a little long and rambling now, but I want to open up another topic right now, briefly. Discount, right? So after 1,500 hours of studying Latin, let's say, I started studying Italian. After about 50 hours of studying Italian, I could already talk on many subjects, understand pretty much everything, and read novels after 50 hours. That's an incredible discount, right? It would take, I think, a person just starting Italian for the first time 300 to 500 hours to reach that goal. I reached that goal in 50 hours of Italian, and then I've continued to improve my Italian. After about 100 hours, I felt very, very, very comfortable in the language. And then it just kept improving after that, right? I'm still not as good in Italian as other languages, just because I haven't had the exposure, I haven't had the opportunity to speak it like I have other languages, but, so that's a big discount. For German, which I started studying after I had already done a lot of Greek, a lot of Latin, a lot of Russian, and yeah, I guess that's it. I got into a good level pretty quickly in German, even though I've never spoken German in my life. I was able to reach a decent level in that language between 100 and 200 hours. Mostly because I knew how to learn a language. I knew what I was doing. I was working very efficiently. And I think a normal person, or a person just learning German for the first time, having no other language experience, it might take them 500 to 600 hours to reach the level that I reached in about 100 to 200 hours. So you do get a very big discount after you've learned how to learn a language. And then once you get a huge discount if you're learning a related language. So like, when I was learning Italian, having already learned Latin. Another example is modern Greek. I'm really working on my modern Greek right now. And as I said, I've worked on modern Greek for about 100 hours, maybe a little less than 100 hours actually. And having studied ancient Greek for so much, modern Greek is coming so quickly. I'm already at a decent level in modern Greek to the point where I can read most things, most articles, nothing too technical. Articles on the internet, basic readers, and I'm doing Skype lessons too, and I can chat. I can say pretty much everything I want. I mean, very slowly with mistakes and asking for words, but I can have a conversation for an hour in modern Greek without too much of a problem. It's not beautiful, and I don't speak quickly or fluently, but I can express myself, and that's after less than 100 hours, right? So the thing is, it's hard to calculate how long it actually takes to become a polyglot because it gets quick, the language, it's different for everybody, and you get a different discount depending on your linguistic background. But, you can set your goals. You can calculate how many hours it's going to take you to reach those goals, and that's what I encourage you to do. But if you want just a simple answer, how long does it take to become a polyglot? The answer is 3 to 20 years. So I hope everybody's doing well, and I'm going to make another video soon, hopefully to show you some books that I bought here in Russia. I've picked up some really cool books, actually, some books that I'm really excited about that I enjoy using. But okay, bye guys. They're not very accurate for the 5 or 6 languages that I started studying before I started keeping track of this, before I started keeping this notebook. But I have a pretty good estimate, a pretty good idea of how long I've spent in each language, and I'll share that with you now. For my 3 best languages, which are Ancient Greek, Latin, and Russian, I have spent, I estimate, somewhere around the 2,000 hour mark. Definitely around the 2,000 hour mark for Greek and Latin, and maybe a little less for Russian. Maybe Russian's closer to 1,500, but I don't know. It could be close to 2,000. I don't know. For Italian, I think I've spent about 500 hours in difficulty, basic level. And I found that to be the case. So in this video, I'm going to talk a little bit about how long does it take to become polyglot, and I'm going to share with you how much time I've spent learning my languages. I should first say that now I keep track of all of my language learning activities in this book. I keep track of it in everything I do in every language that I study in 15-minute increments. And I started doing this, let me see, I don't know, about a year ago, just because I want to know exactly how long I've spent learning all my languages. So the numbers that I have are Italian. For German, I think it's been about 300 to 400 hours. And then for modern Greek and French, about 100 hours each. For Sanskrit and Japanese, about 50 hours each. And then Chinese, Mandarin Chinese, Spanish, Old English, Old Norse, and I guess that's about it. And maybe a few other little languages here and there. All those are much, much less, between the 1 and 20 hour mark. So you can see I've spent, if you add those up, somewhere between 7,000 and 8,000 hours probably learning removed from your own. So for an English speaker, that would be something like Chinese, Japanese, or Korean. And about 1,000 hours, maybe somewhere between 1,000 and 1,500 hours for a middle difficulty language, something like a far removed Indo-European language like Russian, or an unrelated language like Turkish or Hungarian, about 1,000 hours. And for a very easy language like German, French, or Italian, you're looking at somewhere closer to 500 hours. I found that to be about right, for getting to like a basic level of fluency where you can chat about most things, understand the stuff for the most part, read things without too much. Hello everybody, it's me again. I'm coming to you again from Russia to answer a question that I've been wanting to answer for a long time, but someone just asked it again, and I figured why not make this video. How long does it take to learn a language? But I'm going to talk more about how long does it take to become a polyglot, because I think that's a more interesting question. So how long does it take to learn a language? In my experience, have found that the FSI numbers for learning languages, you can Google that if you don't know what that is, FSI Language Difficulty Scale or something like that, are pretty accurate for learning your first language, the first time you embark to learn a language, which is about 2,000 hours for a difficult language, meaning a language far